Got a Winchester Model 94. We're gonna mount this side mount on here. Bolts right on, so there's no drilling or tapping to do. Using these 3 screws. And to that, we're gonna mount this side mount scope mount because it is a top eject model. This is the Weaver 3B 48412, and we're going to see if the scope fits on these side mount model 49350. It's like these 3 screws, that large one holds in the rail for the bolt to ride in. So I'm going to close up the action when I remove them and just hope nothing shifts. These bolts, these screws were incredibly loose. This one I was able to turn. This is the wrong size screwdriver. I wasn't going to put any force in it, but it is a very narrow slot. You can see how narrow that slot is compared to that one. This one readily turned with no effort at all. And these ones I put a lot of downward force on there so they didn't pop out and turn gently. I would guess that these were in less than 5 inch-pounds. I'm gonna prep this surface because it's gonna be underneath of the rail with just a dot of oil, which I'll spread around to prevent any rust. Oh, way too much. I wiped off that drop of oil. And I flipped the paper towel over and wiped it again. And I'll do the same to the side mount plate, just to keep a thin film of oil inside of there. The side mount rail is aluminum, so it shouldn't really rust. But a little bit of oil isn't gonna hurt it. Got these 3 screws out. These 2 are just the tiniest screws. I plan on instantly losing them. Let the vacuum cleaner find them. This one does have a different look to it. Put these in a bag because I'll never need them again. Here are the screws that came with the side mount. We're going to torque these all on to 15 inch-pounds. I think this one's actually 18 inch-pounds, but we're going to stick with 15 given how loose all of these were. This bit has 1012 written on it. There we go. Back off until you feel it drop down, and then just turn it in. Loosen it off a little bit so that there's some play in here to get these screws lined in. Once I have all 3 screws in, I'll start to torque them down. Don't think it matters which order they go in. These screw holes are beveled, so it should center up. These tiny screws seem to fit the 3/4 best. Now we're gonna put the mount on there. These are all aluminum. I'm still gonna put a thin layer of oil in there. The Vortex torque screwdriver did not have flatheads in there, so I broke out all of the Craftsman kits I've got to try and get something as close as possible. Nothing was that close to these, but 15 inch-pounds is not a lot of pressure, and it looks like they were close enough. I don't see any markings on these screws. This large, wide flathead, it's the only flathead that the Vortex torque screwdriver came with. And I don't plan on taking this off, so these are just going to get torqued down too. You just turn when the vortex screwdriver gets to its torque rating, it just cams past its point. There it goes. And I'm turning the handle, but it's not turning the bit anymore. If you are going to go up to 50 inch-pounds, there's a 1/4 inch drive at the top. This part I'm going to do off camera. We're trying to line up the eye relief and get these rings on. This is not going to be an F-class shooter, but we'll try and get it square. And we've got the Crossfire II scope mounted on there. It's alright, not great. The turrets, I had to switch around. I don't know if you can tell in the photo. Rifle barrel will be going this way. The turret facing up. I've turned this 90 degrees. So the turret cap is not covering the ejection port here. It's allowed to eject freely. I'll have to see if that's an issue. Probably fine. The eye relief is also something I wish the scope was further forward. This is further back than I'd want it to be. Weaver does make a different set of rings that would have extended the scope further forward. This back one would sit about here, and the front one would be about here. I think that would be about perfect for the setup. So I might look into switching this piece out. These have all been torqued down to 15 inch-pounds. 15 inch-pounds is a lot tighter than I thought. So if not for the torque wrench, I probably would have made this too loose. But we're going to go out and sight this in, and we'll go through hunting season, and we'll see how it goes. Maybe we'll switch this out for the long style that sticks further out. The other reason I turned the scope 90 degrees is because none of those iron sights are usable. Quick hold now that it's sighted in. This scope has a dead hold BDC reticle with hashes for distances. That's not so useful now that the hashes go up, but it does have some lines for left and right for windage. They ended up being pretty useful, even though the dead hold BDC reticle is not. So it worked out all right. I'm okay with how far back it is. I would have rather have been able to push the scope further forward, but I can't with the turret here. It's hitting the rings. I was able to sight it in at 50 yards, and at 100 yards, the first dash down, about 2 MOA, I think, lines up the shots pretty well. Definitely good enough for a deer, and it's going to work this season.